Good morning. This is Lisa Niver from We Said Go Travel, and I'm here today with Craig and Earl from The Good Road. Hi, guys.
Hey,
Hey,
how
how's it
are
going?
you, Lisa?
I'm doing great. I can't believe you just wrapped season 4. Congratulations.
Thank
Season
you.
four is,
Yep,
yeah, it's
Oh,
hard for us to
10.
believe too, man. I think, it's when you start down this road, you have no idea if you're going to ever get through season one. And now we're at season four, looking at season five.
it's incredible. So, for people that don't know, The Good Road is on PBS, and the
Mhm.
two of you are longtime friends and philanthropists who are sharing incredible stories from all over our planet. So, could you
Yeah.
tell our listeners a little bit about how did this happen? Like, you've obviously, both of you, I read your bios, you've lived around the world, you care
Mhm.
about our planet, and you have a lot of interesting stories, especially about water and the ocean. So, what made this happen? What made you wake up and be like, I want to be a filmmaker and we're going to walk this road together?
Craig, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, so Earl and I went to school together in Bangkok, the city of Bangkok, Thailand, and went to the International School of Bangkok together. I was actually born and raised there. Earl was raised there. His father, started as a Air Force pilot during the Vietnam era. And then I was there because my parents were Baptist missionaries, so that's why I was in Thailand, but we've known each other a long time. And years ago, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, Earl and I got basically the boot from with me and a bunch of other of my team. I was the managing director of the same organization my parents worked for. And so when financial troubles hit, the communications team goes first. And so Earl asked me at the time, he had a company called Good Done Great. So he asked me if I'd travel with another friend of ours from the International School of Bangkok, Patty DiMartini Williams, and so they took me along to be kind of the shooter and storyteller on video for both of their companies. And it was on that trip to Myanmar, Nepal, and Vietnam that Earl said he had an idea for a TV show, and I'm like, okay, can't wait to hear that one. And then he was like, Bourdain meets philanthropy is what his description was. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I kind of love that. So that really kicked off our Good Road story. And incidentally, and somebody asked us the other day when we were filming in New York, whether or not we had done a lot of stuff together and, through the years after our time in Bangkok. And the reality is, I had not seen either Patty or Earl since high school when we took that trip. So it was not only a cool reunion, we had stayed in touch on Facebook and things like that, but it was a cool reunion from in our high school days of the three of us. And then Earl and I, of course, continued on with our good friendship for many, many years in person and working on this project together. So
Yeah. So the show the idea is not very many people want to watch a movie about doing good. They don't want to watch charity videos. Quite frankly, that's the kiss of death. And so when we first started, we called the show Good All Over, and people just wouldn't watch our trailer. So we wrapped it into this travel format, made it the Good Road, and the idea is that we're going to take you to Thailand or Canada or Uganda or wherever, and we're going to show you some people that are going to introduce you to a world that you may not have thought about. So the formula basically is, we'll take you somewhere, we'll try to highlight an issue. We've done anti-poaching and prison reform, maternal health, and all these other things. But the story that I like, that I think illustrates the formula of the show best, is when we went to Yangon, Myanmar. So and we were trying to figure out, Burma has one of the oldest running civil wars in the world. And it's got, the Rohingya crisis. It's got this interesting kind of mixture of different foods and different ethnic minorities. And we're trying to figure out, who is it that would make a good interview for us. And we ran across what we thought was the perfect interview the second we heard about it. It was a punk rock band called Rebel Riot. You don't expect to find punk in Myanmar because it's oppressive, military government. They're super conservative Buddhists. And yet this lead singer, Jojo, is this tall guy with this big mohawk and the kindest face ever. And it was those guys that were really tied into not only the larger punk community, but the downtown community, the street kids. So they're feeding kids. They're doing literacy classes in the middle of a median in downtown Yangon. And I think that's what we do. We flip whatever narrative that you thought you knew about a place, and we try to expose that place in a different way, but it's really character driven. It's, can we find somebody that can represent this area and show it to you in a way that's very different than you've seen it before? And that's really the show. That's the Good Road.
I love that. I myself have traveled a couple of different times in Myanmar, and you're right, it's such a unique place. I love being out on Inle Lake with the leg rowers. When people see the video,
Yeah.
they're like, they row with their legs. And I think you're right. Travel is such an amazing lens into what's happening.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. I think that's,
go
Yeah,
ahead.
I was just going to say, part of the format comes from the fact that, I referenced Bourdain earlier. Part of the format is, and we get a lot of affirmation from people in the TV business because of this, but most people travel with a friend, a family member, just a really good, traveling partner. And, his show, he was always kind of in one sense by himself. So
Mhm.
it's, not to be, cliche, but it's kind of a buddy series, because Earl and I, not only are we like best friends, but we both love to travel. So we experience the travel together. And, that's a huge part of the fun of it. And so most of the things that people, see on camera are very natural. Like when Earl and I experience like somebody cool who's talking about making big changes in their community. We were just in New York at Food Bank NYC, and we're talking to these seniors at this community kitchen, and I mean, some of their stories are like crazy. There's this guy Gregory who is, working on Madison Avenue for decades as a writer, and Earl says, or Earl tells him, he goes, he's this, thin African American guy with a really nice suit on, and but he's there to get his, dinner and all that stuff, and he says to Earl, he goes, and where did you grow up? Where are you from? And Earl says Bangkok, Thailand. And he's like, well, hell, I know it's Thailand. He was almost offended by the fact that Bangkok had to be clarified with Thailand. This is
what
that kind
other
of fun,
Bangkok is there?
Yeah, what other Bangkok is there? And we
Yeah.
just love it. We just enjoy so much, and it does matter that we get to do that together. I think that's an important part of travel, is sharing the experience with somebody else.
Yeah.
I think you're right. It is the other thing though that you bring to the show is your long history of travel and living outside the United States. I mean, many
Yep.
people have visited Thailand, but not many people have lived there. And then I studied abroad in college, but to have studied abroad at such a young age and be immersed and not study abroad, you lived there. I
Yeah.
think that
No,
gives
yeah,
you,
we speak Thai. That's our, I always say that's our bar trick. But it worked really well in a Thai bar. In America, no one cares if you speak Thai in a US bar. But yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, having grown up there, and then, and then Craig went on to film in, dozens of different countries for the organization that he was with, and I had worked internationally. And so, for us, it's always one of those, if you get to know the places, some of the language, and you actually get to know the people. What you won't see on our show is kind of us doing the top listicles, 5-place dive bars in, Gurkha, Nepal, or something like that. I mean, it's just, but you will see people. You'll get to know people, and you'll get to know people that are doing some interesting things. And that could be professional baseball players, sculptors, activists. We were in New York City with a good friend of ours, Michaela, who has this Bare Feet show on PBS. She had us up there doing voguing in downtown Brooklyn. So if you were there this last weekend, I apologize to everyone who saw that, but but it's, and it was even that little thing, right? So it's like voguing. I didn't have an appreciation until we had, kind of this Marcel, but what it is, I mean, because you talk about pride, and it's standing up, and it's having confidence, and going down the street, and being, really proud about who you are as a person. And just being with someone in that world wasn't just a cutesy little dance that Madonna did. It was much, much more once you get to know why people do that. And I think that's what we get to do, is it expose it by the people that really care about it. And we find out, just like the viewers do, about some cool people all over the world.
Yeah, I would add too, there's an element of the way we grew up. There's a cross-cultural experience that happens only if you grow up in another country. And that cross-cultural experience leans into the fact that we should all love and respect each other. We should try to identify and learn and understand another person's culture before we make any kind of critique about it. In fact, it's probably best to not critique other people's culture, because you don't, if you're not part of it, if you're not part of that group, it quite frankly is annoying for you to be a critic of it. Like, and so, for us, that means being able to talk to, in the case of the voguing thing, we're there for gay pride. I'm a heterosexual male, but you're there amongst a lot of very, gay people. And in that cross-cultural experience, the only thing that I felt bad was I was screwing everything up because I'm such a bad and uncoordinated dancer,
Well, but anyone who's watched Michaela's show or danced with her, I mean, she's such a great teacher. She's so enthusiastic. I
Yeah.
think that she's so welcoming. And I think you're right. It's a cross-cultural experience. And you talked about growing up in a specific faith-based reason for being in Bangkok. And can you guys talk a little bit about, for season 4, being in Iraq with the kids in school who were having a discussion about faith?
Yeah, actually, well, so we could talk a little bit about it. I mean, Craig and I, both of us, my parents later became missionaries and things, but I always say I was a missionary kid because I was the kid and not necessarily the best representative of the church always. And we all have our own journeys, right? So it's not really a faith-based thing. In fact, I didn't want to really go down the road of doing a lot of, faith-based things. I just want to mention one little story. The very first, we went to Mbala, Uganda, and we started to cover this husband and wife team. And Adam and Kathy was a neonatologist. Adam is an anesthesiologist. They were working in a really remote town. They had 2 tiny little babies, little girls at the time. And I remember saying, why in the world? Because you can work in the UK where they're from and just crush it, and then just send money down to someone else that can work in a maternal health clinic that was getting 200, kids referred in, and they had a 50%, mortality rate, and see all the deaths. I mean, to have someone else make your money and send it somewhere else to do it. And so when we were asking them, why is it that you're doing it? Were they to have said, it's because we believe that this is God's will for us and things like that, I would have gotten it. I totally would have gotten it. But I quite frankly, it would have bored me, because that story I've heard a million times. Instead, what Kathy and Adam said is, look, we're not Christians. We're atheists. And I was like, there was no mandate. It's just humanity seeing other humans, and then kicking in. And so sometimes it's those things that, again, flip the narrative. In Iraq was interesting because Iraq Mosul is one of the most kind of, diversely religious cities in the world. They have thousands and thousands of really large Christian population that's been there for, hundreds and hundreds of years. They also have the Muslims, they have the Yazidis, you have some Jewish folks, you have just a group of people that are there. And when we were there, most of what we knew about Iraq was really war coverage that you would have seen on the news. But now we're inside of an elementary school, and the U.S. it was the 20th anniversary of the U.S.'s involvement in Iraq. And as we're going into some very conservative schools where they were held by ISIS, and there's still ISIS folks that go to those schools, you started seeing people that were both parents were ISIS and kids whose parents were killed by ISIS in the same classroom. And you say, how can peace happen when these kids who are 11, 12-year-old girls, they're all one sex, right? So it's either girls or guys. In this case, the girls, it's like, how do you ever trust that other person that's right beside you? And so the organization that we're highlighting, Hardwired Global, does a lot of curriculum around religious pluralism and just getting to know each other. And that's a metaphor for the rest of travel. I mean, you have to be together. You have to see each other. You have to see each other as humans. And that's what travel does. So we can watch travel shows, but when you're there, all of the fears that you may have had going into a country beforehand, our first time going to Iraq, there's a lot of misconceptions. By the time you leave a couple of weeks later, you're like, you know what? I see them as people very differently than I saw it. And I think that's the beauty of real travel.
I would say, I would add to that in terms of Iraq, that one of the hardest days that Earl and I had there was when we listened to these really young girls basically talking. And one of the things that they said that was really kind of a smackdown, was a smackdown on all of us adults and all of the people who are complicit in warfare. They're basically this one girl who had lost her father because he was an ISIS fighter. And she's like, we just children we want this not to have war. That's just what we're asking for, basically, is in essence what she said. We just don't want fighting, and it's like, whoa, out of the mouth of a, 8 or 9-year-old, like, wow, that's pretty profound. What a message for the world, really. And I think Earl and I both were shedding some tears in that
Oh
particular
yeah, no,
interview.
that was a heart-wrenching, episode.
Wow. I mean, you've gotten to experience so many different cultures. And one of the things I notice is you're also looking at how does our planet continue, like looking at sustainable
Yeah.
farming or stony
Right.
coral disease, the Atlantic
Yeah.
sturgeon. You really
Mhm.
have a focus on some of the crisis in our planet. So is
Right.
there one place that sticks out for you that is the good news or the good road, that where they've really made great strides with helping with things like that?
You mentioned the sturgeon, and we did an episode right outside of Richmond, in the James River, and for decades people thought that the great sturgeon were no longer in the James River, and then and now they're coming back, and actually they're coming back in droves. And the point from one of the guys that grew up, one of the scientists, he said, "Look, we didn't do any remediation. We didn't go through and do a lot of cleanup and stuff. What we did was we stopped messing up the river. We just stopped polluting it, and it had a restorative thing." And I think a lot of times that is it. A lot of times with almost anything, just it's almost like the doctor. It's first do no harm. It's just stop doing bad, and there's space for good to happen. And that's kind of the story of the sturgeon, but that's also a metaphor, I think, for a lot of travel.
Yeah, and the same in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Basically, the stony coral disease came over really from Florida, where they had been dumping sewage and everything into the ocean, and it made its way and wound up, of course, in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And in St. Thomas, at the University of the Virgin Islands, when we interviewed them in the water, which was kind of cool. I'd never really done an interview underwater, really, kind of. And but in the water, you're looking at these coral that may never be able to bounce back from this disease, and you think, it's like Earl said about the river. You just, if you can try to be reactive to the things like this disease, but you've got to really be proactive and think about what we're doing, before everything goes to hell.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you talk about a connection and community, air, water, all of these things we all share. And so we'll see the impacts in a country from something that's happening very far away. In fact, when we were in New York City this last time, you started to see the ash from the wildfires that were happening in Canada. Look, we're connected very closely. And when you start to see the impacts that are happening in one place that impact kind of all of us, it doesn't feel like the borders are so rigid anymore. It starts to feel like, we're occupying the same space. And that's what I think that's another area that we get to explore with the show and the format that we do is, who is it has these worldwide global problems that they've received from elsewhere, and then how do they take care of themselves or take care of the rest of them? So anyway, there's a lot of stuff that just show how interconnected we are.
Well, it's interesting how it's all sort of the same layer, right? The children are saying, you're making war and it's hard for us to live. The fire's in one place, but the air doesn't know, where the border is, and that we're
Right.
all connected. The water the lionfish is a huge issue that I've been writing about, this invasive species or you know, like rivers with pollution. I mean, it's, you know, your show I think is very aspirational about how can we dream bigger, how can we work together, how can we find the good road.
Yeah.
Well,
And that's it. Yeah.
Earl referenced space earlier. I will say that last season, because and this part's important, you know, we did a couple episodes about space, and one of the things that you know, we talked about was the overview effect and being able to look back at the planet and realize that all the borders and all the things we put on it for ourselves. Or what's the comment from the astronauts
Yeah,
about?
they say that, you know, they say once you've seen the Earth from afar, then it changes everything. They call that an overview effect, but they say that astronauts leave the planet as astronauts and come back as conservationists because you see the world from such an unlikely existence and how subtle, you know, any little changes are and how connected they were. And so I love that, because if travel has the ability to change your mind or help you understand the world better, then space travel even more so. And they talk about how transformative that experience can be. So we highlighted an organization called Space Perspective that does exactly that. They're starting to launch balloons into space. So you're, you know, 100,000 feet in the air, it's 2 hours up, 2 hours in space, 2 hours descent. And you get that experience to see the world in a very different way. And travel is all of that. Travel is that experience that can really change you. And when I said, you know, you first go to, you know, Iraq and you're not sure what to expect, I know from myself that if I have blind spots that I'm not, you know, that I just have misconceptions or stereotypes, that it probably makes sense for me to go somewhere. I went to Sudan in January of this year. And, you know, again, it was a brief period while it was peace. And I was so blown away with how great that, you know, experience was afterwards, because I had no clue of what these people were like. But their Muslim traditions are so welcoming. They, you know, it's just, there was a million things, hospitality and things. And I think at the end of it, once you've gone and come back, then you start seeing those things as people, as not very different, you know, and you have a lot better, you know, it just breaks down all of these barriers that you have in your mind. And that's, you know, for us, that's the beauty of travel.
Well, that was an amazing summary of how fantastic your show is and why you're about to launch season 4 on PBS. Again, congratulations on all of the awards and all the destinations and really bringing the issues around our planet into people's living rooms. So before I let you go, could you just let people know for season 4, when is it coming? And if they haven't seen the first 3 seasons, where can they find you?
Well, there's a couple of different ways that you can see it. So you can see it on pbs.org and their Passport app. You can also see it seasons 1 through 3 on Amazon Prime. So it's an ad supported, so it's free. You can see it there. It's still running on Delta Airlines, and there's some others. It's in Roku and whatever. But if you just Google The Good Road, you'll find the good way to actually see it. Season 4 will start airing in September of this year, 2023. And so we'll run, it's 8 episodes per season. They'll run them in primetime spots beginning of September. So it'll run season 4 will run September through October, and then it'll rerun for the next 2 years on PBS channel. So it's check your local listings or check it out on thegoodroad.tv.
Yeah, we've gotten into a cadence, like season 5 will probably also be in the fall. So we've gotten into a cadence now where you can see it every fall, but also all year through Amazon Prime now and pbs.org.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I'm so excited for season 4 and to learn more about all the incredible characters and destinations and philanthropy projects. So thank you both for being here.
Thank
Awesome.
you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
having
much,
us.
Lisa.
Appreciate it.